What is mortgage fraud and why is it in the news lately? And why are new immigrants and first-time home buyers often the target of mortgage fraud? Well, in this video, we're going to go through a CBC article which focuses on an undercover investigation that they did into mortgage fraud. And make sure you stay until the end because I'm going to give you some tips and tricks that I would use to try and protect myself. So, let's get to it. Hi everybody, my name is Connie Sarvanandan and I'm a real estate agent and investor here in Toronto and the GTA. And this video is different than videos that I've done in the past. And the reason why is many of my viewers are either first-time home buyers or new immigrants. And because they are often the target of mortgage fraud, I thought that this was relevant. So let's get right to the article and we can talk about it. Okay, so here's the article, and the article is from cbc.ca, and the title of this article is Real Estate Agents Caught on Camera Facilitating Mortgage Fraud for a Fee. And I'm going to link to this article, and I'm actually going to link to the actual CBC Marketplace video that you can watch. So fake employment records, bank statements, and T4s offered to would-be home buyers. So a couple of things I want to mention about this article. They are focusing specifically on a real estate brokerage in Ontario, and this brokerage has about 3,000 agents. Now, there's lots of brokerages, and brokerages are like the company that I actually work for. So my brokerage is Remax Hallmark, and we have about 2,700 agents in our brokerage. So to give you some perspective on that, there are over 80,000 agents in Ontario, and there's over 60,000 agents in Toronto. So for sure, you're going to get bad apples in that group. And, you know, just because the agents that you are thinking about working with don't work for this specific brokerage that they're talking about, I would say that you still need to do the same due diligence and make sure that you are researching everybody before you make a decision. And my first tip about this is really about trying to interview at least 3 agents and 3 lenders. And what you're looking for is understanding the process and making sure that the process makes sense to you and that you understand exactly what you have to do, what documentation you have to have, and what is expected from you from a financial and a legal standpoint. And when you talk to these 3 different people, the messaging should be consistent. And if there's messaging that is inconsistent, then that's, a red flag that you want to investigate more. The other 2 big red flags that you should be really cautious about when you're dealing with a real estate agent or a mortgage broker is 1, if they ask you for money, and 2, if they ask you to lie, because those things don't happen. They shouldn't ask you for money and they shouldn't ask you to lie. So, and I'm going to get more into that a little bit later in the article. So let's get to the article. So the next few paragraphs in the article really cover off the background. So first of all, mortgages are tougher to get. With rising interest rates and the high price of housing, they're tougher to get. So there are individuals that are taking advantage of this by creating mortgage fraud for a fee. So why would a real estate agent or a lender do this, or a bank employee? Because they are going to make money, and that's why they're doing this. And so what is mortgage fraud? It's lying about, and it's creating an application that is not true. So they're lying about employment, they're lying about T4s, they're lying about all kinds of things in order for these individuals to look like they could qualify for a mortgage legitimately. It's stuff that they wouldn't qualify for traditionally. And what they're saying is, there's definitely a group of consumers, so buyers, that are willing to do mortgage fraud in order to get a mortgage because they desperately want to buy, and they're willing to lie about the fact that they have this stuff in order to get it. And oftentimes those are people that can't prove their income, which is a non-starter for most traditional banks. If you are like a cash business and you don't file T4 4s, that can be a non-starter. And so there's another group of people that are targets for mortgage fraud, and those are generally new immigrants. And the reason why new immigrants are a target is because, first of all, they don't understand the process in Canada, and second of all, their employment and credit history is often not long enough, if they're new, that they're going to qualify for a traditional mortgage approval. So that's what it talks about. It also talks about the fact that this is against the law. Whether you're a real estate agent, whether you are a mortgage broker, or you are a consumer, it's against the law to falsify a mortgage application. So the next few paragraphs cover off consequences for buyers and the market. And so basically what it's saying is the person who's going to be most responsible for mortgage fraud is going to be you as the buyer. And so oftentimes what happens with this is that people get approvals for mortgages that they can't actually afford. And the backup plan for those buyers was that, if I can't afford it because of rising interest rates, I'll just sell the property. Well, the problem is, as interest rates rise, property values are coming down. So oftentimes you're finding that buyers are going to go into default because they can't sell it to cover off what they have, and they can't make the mortgage payments. So that's one consequence. The other consequence is they're saying that because there was these buyers that entered the marketplace at rates, mortgages that they couldn't afford, they were creating an artificial bump in the number of competitive buys. So they're just saying that they affect the market because they help rise the pricing in the market when it shouldn't have happened. Okay, so then the next few paragraphs talks about RECO. So RECO is the Real Estate Council of Ontario, and that's my governing body. They're the ones who hold my license. So what RECO is saying is that for real estate agents, falsifying mortgage information or even assisting in falsifying mortgage information can result in fines up to $50,000, prison for 2 years, or suspension or cancellation of an agent's real estate license. So RECO has some rules and regulations. I think everybody agrees that they're going to be more active in enforcement. And then the other thing that's mentioned here is Equifax. Equifax is one of the credit bureaus that is in Canada. Equifax is saying that mortgage fraud is a growing problem, and this was probably the most shocking thing about the article to me. They said 67% of applications that we find are tagged by our members as fraudulent or actually related to some kind of misrepresentation. So they are definitely flagging things now as misrepresentation, and misrepresentation can be a lot of different things, but this is a huge number. So it's definitely something that they are keeping an eye on. And then we move to the actual marketplace investigation and what they did exactly. If you're finding value in these videos, please like and subscribe. It really helps us determine what kind of videos are important to you. And if you have any real estate needs here in Toronto or the GTA, feel free to call, text, email, or WhatsApp, and we'll be sure to take care of you. And finally, if you want to talk to me directly, I'll put my calendar link below. We love hearing your comments, good or bad, so please make comments below and engage with us. Thanks. So the next few paragraphs really talk about the marketplace investigation, and it falls under marketplace staff posed as home buyers with hidden cameras. So I'm going to give you the high-level overview, but I recommend if you want to get the details that you actually watch the video. It's about 20 minutes long, and I will link it to it down below. And remember, Marketplace is a TV show, and so that's what the video is. So Marketplace, here's the high-level overview. So Marketplace had 2 employees go undercover with hidden cameras. Those 2 employees pretended that they were new immigrants, and they actually spoke the language, so it helped to make them legitimate. And they went in as home buyers, and they were new immigrants. Now, they went to 10 homes to see 10 homes. And what CBC did was they targeted 10 homes that were from a specific brokerage or agents that they suspected were doing fraud. And so this couple went in, spoke the language, said that, they have a 20% down payment. However, one of the couple had undeclared cash income. Now, undeclared cash income would disqualify you from the 5 big banks for a mortgage. And quite honestly, most of the time, undeclared cash income means that it's a non-starter for a mortgage. So what is undeclared cash income? It means that you are making money as cash and you are not reporting it anywhere. You're not paying taxes, you don't have a T4, all of that stuff. So if you don't have that, then that's usually a non-starter for a mortgage. But what these agents did in these 10 houses, not all of them, but some of them said, hey, no problem, we can create false document for you so that you can get a mortgage. So we can create a T4, we can create an employer, we can do all of this so that it looks like you actually have this income in a legitimate way. So they were totally gonna falsify stuff. So that's what they talked about from a real estate agent standpoint. And then they move on to mortgage agents. Like, same thing is that they called up mortgage agents, randomly found some mortgage agents that would also create false documents and do this fraud in order to qualify. And then finally, they found actually a bank employee who charged $5,000 to create a false profile with false employers and everything else. When the big bank found out about this after this investigation, they actually refunded the $5,000. The employee is no longer there, and they are investigating the whole thing. But that's kind of the overview of what the investigation was. So again, if you want more details, go and look at the actual video. So the last few paragraphs really focus on the buyers that they featured in this presentation. And basically, there was 2 sets of buyers. One had unwittingly committed mortgage fraud because this bank employee created false information for them for this $5,000. And then the other couple, they overextended themselves without fully understanding what they were doing. So both the couples, it's heartbreaking. They are both new immigrants. They both worked hard for their down payments, and now they are under such stress because of everything that's happening. The point of this part of it is that what they say is we need more oversight. We need more oversight from a real estate agent standpoint, from a mortgage agent standpoint, from a banking standpoint. All those different organizations really need to increase their oversight, is what the article finishes off with. And it also states that ultimately it's going to be the buyer that's going to be responsible for whatever happens with this. So even though there are other parties involved, it's going to be you that's responsible for this. So this is why it's really critical that you understand the process and understand what's happening before you do anything with real estate. So let me give you my final tips and tricks. Okay, so what are my tips and tricks? Well, a couple of things I want to mention before I get to that. First of all, I believe that the majority of real estate agents, mortgage agents, lenders, and bank employees are legitimate, and they're not lying, and they're not trying to commit mortgage fraud. That said, ultimately, if there is mortgage fraud, the majority of the onus of responsibility is going to fall on you as the buyer. So saying that you don't understand it or you didn't know is not going to protect you. It's still going to be on you as the buyer. So it's really important that you understand all of this. The second thing I will say is I am an immigrant, and my parents were those immigrants that I came to Canada when I was 4, and my parents were those immigrants that were getting mortgages here. And I know how hard it is to come to Canada and establish yourself. And when I hear about these new immigrants being taken advantage of, it breaks my heart. It's already tough enough coming to Canada, let alone like dealing with, somebody misleading you. So again, information is key. So what are my tips and tricks? So my first tip is to find online resources to start. So find online resources, ideally from government or oversight organizations. So from RICO or from the government of Ontario or government of Canada, from the major bank sites. All of that information should be unbiased and easy to access. Then move to specific sites. So it could be a real estate agent site like my site, or it could be other agents or mortgage lenders and everything else, so you get another perspective as well. So that's kind of getting the background so that you're familiar with the language and you're familiar about the process. And then I would, again, meet with at least 3 real estate agents and 3 mortgage lenders. And when you meet with a real estate agent, even if there's somebody you know, like, and trust, I would still talk to the 2 other agents just to make sure that the information is consistent and there's no red flags. There's no harm, because my second point and my second tip is that information is free. Now listen, if you call me, I get first-time buyer calls all the time. So my first conversation is always free-flowing. I will offer as much information as possible. And that is true of most real estate agents. So call and find out as much information as possible. It's not going to cost you any money. And then that leads to my third tip, which nothing should cost you money initially. Whether it's working with a real estate agent or working with a mortgage broker. Now, of course, there's going to be things like appraisals that may cost you $500. But if a real estate agent or a mortgage agent tells you that it's going to cost you money to work with them, that's a big red flag. For me as a real estate agent, I get paid when you actually purchase the home. And I'm paid by the seller. So it isn't even costing you anything from my standpoint. So just make sure that, when you do this 3-person interview, that all the information is correct and nobody's asking you for money. And then I would say the biggest red flag is somebody telling you to lie. So if you are lying on anything, if you're lying about your income, your employer, or anything that has to do with an application, then that is a huge, huge red flag, because that is basically committing fraud. So if somebody is asking you to lie, I would just step away. I would go and meet with somebody else, because that's not normal. That is not how things are done. And again, ultimately, if there are issues, you are going to be responsible. And then I would say the final thing is that if you are going to go outside the normal practices, so if you are not going to be using a traditional lender, if you are going to a secondary source, if you are, making side deals with your real estate agent, also understand what those consequences are and what you will have to do. Because again, there's a normal, regular procedure, and then there's going to be these one-offs. And I think that's when you get into trouble. If people are asking you to do something that's not part of the normal procedure, which you should be fully comfortable with, then that's where you need to question it. And I hope this video helps. If you have any questions or comments, would love to hear them down below. And if you want to reach out to me, feel free to call, text, email, or WhatsApp, or just make a calendar appointment down below. And thank you for watching, and I'll talk to you next time.